I am just honored and thrilled that you have a chance to meet Mark Van Herr tonight. He has such a passion in helping people in the community just talk about how to get the resources they need when they are feeling that hope might be a little bit lost. And so I would love to turn it over to Mark. He has brought some brochures here on the Beautiful Mind Project. I'm sure he'll go into more detail about. I have a lot of brochures either here if you want to take one and just pass, and then also there's some in the back where you would grab the bulletin. But without further ado, Mark.
All right, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. And I just would like to say, before I get started, that I think what you guys have been doing here over the last several weeks is really a fantastic service, and you should give a big kudos to your leadership for encouraging these types of discussions in our community. We need them in our community. And so, as Melanie said, my name is Mark Van Herr. I'm the founder of the Beautiful Mind Project and Mindology Mental Wellness Center. And before I tell you about some of the resources and why I do what I do, I think it's you have to understand my story. And so my story begins like this. 20 years ago, a 4-year-old girl saved my life. I had written a suicide note and left it on the kitchen counter for my now ex-wife. And I grabbed a knife out of the butcher's block and the keys to my truck, and I drove to a deserted parking lot where I planned to take my life. And as I was sitting there in what I thought would be my final moments, thoughts of my 4-year-old girl came into my head. What would it do to her and her life? How would she turn out? How would it impact her? And in that moment, I was able to find the strength to put the knife back down and go home. And it would take another 2 years before I'd be properly diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, I've been on meds for 18 years. I've been normal ever since, whatever your definition of normal is. But unless you lived in my house, you didn't know. I didn't share it with people because I didn't want it to affect my friendships. I didn't want it to affect my career. I was in a commission-based sales job. Would people want to buy from a crazy guy? I couldn't take that risk. And so I didn't share it with anybody else. And then about 6.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes. And the next day, I shared that on social media. I wanted to get ideas about nutrition and medication and diet and exercise and recipes. And I had this avalanche of support that came out. And it got me thinking, why did I share one diagnosis after 24 hours? But it had been a decade at that point, and I hadn't shared the other. When if you think about it, they're really the same thing. Now, I know some folks are like, wait, diabetes and bipolar disorder are the same thing? Yeah, they are. They're both chemical imbalances in the body that require medication for it to operate and function properly. They just affect different parts of your body. And as soon as you can accept that fact that mental health is physical health, it starts to change the conversation for folks. Now, that got me most of the way there to wanting to do something. A couple months later, it was back to school time, and I have 2 kiddos now, and giving them that back to school pep talk. Parents, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You're gonna do great, you're gonna have fun, you're gonna make new friends, and don't worry about what anybody says to you, because the minute you start living your life for somebody else, it's no longer your life. And I gotta tell you, I felt like a huge hypocrite. I wasn't doing that. How can I tell my kids to do that if I'm not willing to do that? And 3 weeks later, I launched the Beautiful Mind Project. So, this is the Beautiful Mind Project. If you take out your phone, if you'd like, you can scan the QR code and it'll bring you to our website. But the Beautiful Mind Project started off as a part-time passion project for me. It was 10 hours a week. I gave some presentations on some things, did some public speaking, and I really wanted to put a face to mental health because coming from a sales background, there's an old phrase that goes, facts tell, stories sell. And I can tell you all the stats you want to know about mental health. But if I tell you my story, that's going to have a way different impact on you. It's going to move you to take action. And so I wanted people to understand that you can have a mental illness and still have a family and a mortgage and run a business and do all of the things that normal people do. And so, like I said, we started with having workshops. I've done workshops for the Chamber of Commerce here in town and across the state, businesses, civic groups. One of our other things that we've done is our 30 Stories in 30 Days series, where we have folks from the community who share their stories to put their face on mental health. And people identify with those challenges and those struggles. And it's so, so important because mental health can be incredibly isolating with things. We started a college scholarship. We've given away 5 college scholarships so far. This year's award amount is $2,500. We just closed the application fee earlier this week. And basically, the way our college scholarship works is you just have to be going to a 2 or 4 year accredited institution. Don't really care about your grades. We're assuming they're good enough to get into college. Don't care what you're going to study because you don't need to be in mental health to be an advocate for it. But what we do care about is the essay that you submit with it about how mental health has impacted your life and how you're going to use that moving forward. And so we've been doing that for a while and plan to expand that, make the amount. Once we get to 5,000, we're going to start a second one. So, then the first big idea came. Now, I told you that knowing my story was important to all of these things that are going to come up here. And you have to understand that everything that I do is born out of my own personal experience. And one of my personal experiences and frustrations with the mental health care system is that there is no middle ground. Either you're going to talk therapy or you're calling a crisis line. There's nothing in the middle. What if it's really important? I'm really struggling. I don't want to hurt myself, but I also can't wait 5 weeks for an appointment. What do you do? Well, you're going to wait 5 weeks for an appointment and hope it doesn't escalate to needing a hotline, right? And I just found that unacceptable. I mean, imagine if you woke up today with a fever of 101, body aches, chills, just feeling crummy, and you call the doctor and they say, I'm sorry you're not feeling good. We could see you about mid-May. You'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm sick today. I need to see somebody today, maybe tomorrow, but certainly not in 5 weeks. But when it comes to mental health, we just accept it. Like, yeah, okay, I guess, whatever. That's just unacceptable to me. We can do better. And so I thought about it, and I came up with a solution. And we've had urgent care for mental health now for 3.5 years. You again, take that QR code, it's gonna bring you to the website, and it takes you about 45 seconds to request an appointment. You can also call a number, and you can call that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You will get an actual person who will answer, and they will ask you a handful of questions, and it'll take about a minute, and your request for an appointment will be submitted. Now, the model that I developed, I affectionately called the Uber of mental health. All right, so if you think about Uber, they don't actually give anybody a ride. They pair people who need a ride with people who can provide a ride, and they handle everything in between. That's what we did. We didn't actually provide any mental health care. We matched people who needed an appointment right away with providers who had openings. We were a matchmaker. And in the 3.5 years, we've never missed that 24-hour window, that same or next day appointment slot. Now, something changed a little bit ago, and you probably have heard of it. COVID came along. And it really impacted our model because our model was based on us going after providers who were maybe on that second page of Google, right? That solo provider, that mom and pop provider, who, look, they just want to be a therapist. They don't know the first thing about running a business. And as a result, they have some openings, and we're going to scoop up those openings, and they pay us for that service. And then COVID came, and there's a huge influx of appointment requests for folks. It's a good thing. I'm glad people are reaching out. The problem is that even those folks on page 2 were busy now, and it impacted our ability to grow. And I was really concerned that it would impact our ability to meet our same or next day appointment target. So I began to rethink the model. How do we do this? How can we continue to make this happen? And the only way to do that is if you can control the inventory of appointments. And the only way to do that is if you open up your own clinic. And so here's a little bit about urgent care. We accept a variety of insurance. We're able to treat most ages and most conditions. We can do in-person or telehealth. So we could literally service anybody in the entire state if we needed to. And so I mentioned that the only way to control that inventory is if you open up your own clinic. And when I started the Beautiful Mind Project, this was never on my radar. Heck, 5 months ago, this wasn't on my radar. We're opening in May. So we went from nothing 5 months ago to open 5 months later. And so I decided, though, that if we're going to do this, it's going to be different. It's going to be the way someone who uses mental health care would want it to be, right? And every other place out there is built from the top down. It's built from a medical administration type perspective. Ours is not. Let's start with the name, Mindology Mental Wellness Center. I called it a wellness center. It's not a clinic, because a clinic, to me, implies you need to be sick to go. A wellness center is a place you go to get and stay healthy. Mindology. Mind, so we're going to offer traditional talk therapy, just like you would experience at other places. And then we're going to offer our urgent care for mental health as an option. The ology is physiology. So these are going to be types of services that in and of themselves aren't going to cure your depression, fix your anxiety, but they will help you maintain and manage your mental health more effectively, right? So these are going to be things like massage therapy, art therapy, yoga, nutrition, healing touch, meditation, you name it. So again, a different approach to mental health. Some of the other things that are going to be different, we're going to offer private waiting areas for people who need them. I don't know why every place doesn't do this. It's totally free to do. We have an office that's going to be set aside so people who have high anxiety, or maybe they're still dealing with that stigma of asking for help. Or maybe they just, they're on the autism spectrum and they get overstimulated, right? It's a simple thing to do, but it makes their experience that they're having there completely different. One of the other challenges that people have when you pick out a mental health care provider is, are you gonna click with them, right? A lot of times it's kind of like Tinder for therapy, right? You look on a website and you go, oh, they look all right. And that's where you go. And if you don't like them, you go once or twice, and maybe you never go back. And we don't want that. So we're going to have monthly therapist meet and greets. Again, free event, costs us nothing to do, but again, a different way to experience and access mental health. This is the way it should be in the system. So the therapists will be spread out through a community area, and folks can come in, and we'll make it clear, like, this isn't a place for you to get a treatment session here. This is for you to just have a conversation about their work history, their background. And most people can tell within the first few minutes if you're gonna connect or not, right? And so that's one of the other pieces that we're gonna be doing there. Traditional talk therapy, urgent care, physiological programming. Again, who we serve, most conditions, most ages. We're going to accept most insurance. We'll be accepting cash pay and a sliding fee scale for those who can't afford the full fare. Now, we have a couple other really fun things that I'm excited about that we're adding on to this whole mental health package and resources. And that is a program called Mosaic. If you think about a mosaic, it's comprised of a bunch of small pieces that in and of themselves don't really amount to much. But when you step back, you see a really beautiful picture. And our lives are like that. Our lives are comprised of a bunch of small pieces that when you step back can make a really beautiful picture. And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of mental health. So what we're going to do, coming this fall, we're going to provide cost-free counseling to anybody who needs it, no questions asked. Most people are like, oh, that's so awesome. How are you going to pay for that? That's a good question. I'm a big believer in simple solutions to big problems. And the best way to do it is to access what's available. And there are about 250 grad students in our community at the 3 universities. And those grad students need something called practicum hours. Think of it as an internship for their program. Now, the problem is there's not enough places that will take these students, because there's no upside for a clinic to take them. They can't bill, they require supervision, there's just not a lot of upside. Not when you have a nonprofit, it's not. So we're gonna scoop up some interns And we're going to provide those interns with the opportunity to get their hours while they treat patients, all at no cost. And they'll work under a supervised therapist, a licensed therapist with that. We're also going to have a bunch of folks who are going to volunteer and assist folks with the other pieces of their mosaic. So these are things that aren't mental health direct, but indirect. Things like housing insecurity, food insecurity, no health care, transportation issues, childcare issues. These are all things that weigh on somebody that can stress their mental health. Imagine if you had to decide between putting brakes on your car, paying your rent, or getting help for your mental health. Which one of those do you think goes first? It's kind of a no-brainer, right? So most of these appointments are going to be in the evening from like 3 to 8. Why? Because of who our target market is. Our target market is not the poorest of the poor. Most of those folks have resources. We'll certainly help them, of course, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to help the working poor. Those folks making $18 an hour, working their butts off, and they can't even ask for 4 weeks off in a row to go to an appointment because they can't afford to lose the hours. They don't want to tell their boss why they have to leave. They maybe can't even afford the company health insurance program, or if they do, it's a $10,000 deductible, so you might as well not even have it anyway, right? So these are folks that are stuck. They make too much to get help from the state or the county, but not enough to get ahead and care for themselves and their family. And so that's where this program comes into play. So the program is going to be at night, so those folks who have those types of jobs that don't afford them that flexibility to leave, they will get that opportunity to see somebody in the evening. We're also not going to ask for any kind of financial information either. I think it's incredibly degrading to have to prove how poor you are in order to get help. I mean, logically, I get it. It still doesn't take away from the fact that it's degrading to a human to say, look how much of a loser I am. Can you please help me? And so we don't want that. You just have to raise your hand and say, I need help, and away we go. We're also located on a bus line, so again, we can try to ease some of those transportation issues. And that's our Mosaic program that's coming this fall. Inside of that, we're going to have a program for postpartum depression. And we're actually, we've got a couple things in the hopper there for funding for that. We're really excited about this. This is the most untalked about, underrepresented mental health group there is, period, no questions asked. It just is. Women don't talk about postpartum depression. They're supposed to be happy. You just had a baby, you know? So what we're going to do is we're going to give them a new mom care package. We're going to put them in pods of 6 to 8 with other moms. And they're going to get free access to mental health care, yoga classes, meditation, all those types of things, nutrition consultations. And the idea is that they'll also build a community within that pod of other people who are having that shared experience that they can rely on. And then another program that's coming up this summer, actually, is a program that's geared toward teen, tweens, and their parents. And it's a program called Kaizen. And Kaizen is a Japanese word for constant and steady gradual improvement. And it's targeted towards those teen and tweens who have really struggled with their mental health. We understand that kids can kind of close you off. If you have a teen or a tween, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have a 13, almost 14-year-old, and what I've learned is my kid will open up and talk to me a lot more if we're doing something. If we're cooking or doing yard work or whatever, they kind of forget, like, oh, I'm the evil parent, right? And they'll start to talk and share. So the kids will be in groups of 15, and they'll do different projects. You know, it could be art or music or whatever is decided under the supervision of a therapist who's going to slide in some helpful tools and tips to those kids. While the kids are doing that, their parents will be in a separate room getting peer support and working with a therapist to talk about how to deal with things as a parent. Because as a parent, if your child has struggled with their mental health, maybe they've made an attempt on their life, you don't really talk about that with other people. There's shame in that, there's guilt in that. And who can you turn to? And so we want these folks to know that, you're not alone. And how do you manage the rest of the family if there's other kids in the house? How do you manage your own mental health while trying to manage your child's, Your child is struggling, you feel terrible. There's just a lot of things there that people don't often get help for. And so again, this is another program, and she was going to be here tonight, but she couldn't make it. The young lady who started the fundraiser for this program, her name is Reese. She's 15, and she's on her own mental health journey, and that's why we're doing this program, is because of her. And so again, everything that we do is kind of based off of my own life experiences with different things. So talking about community resources, there are literally hundreds of community resources. I mean, there's just so many, it's like a phone book, literally. But I did want to highlight one that a lot of folks don't know about, and that's the 4-county crisis intervention team. These guys will literally go to your house and address that mental health issue that you're having, your friend is having, your child is having. And they will assess and take it from there. So when you're not sure what to do with that special somebody, these guys, that's the number you call. And like I said, a lot of people don't know that this exists. So you don't have to worry about taking them anywhere. I can't get them in the car. They won't leave their room. This is who you call. If you call the cops, this is who they'll call. So it's a really fabulous program. And like I said, there's a lot of different things out there for every niche available. And so you really want to kind of start with the basics, go to your typical counselor, go to urgent care, and follow those courses and let them direct you to the proper resources and make sure that happens. So let's talk a little bit about how we can find the opportunity in the obstacle, right? This whole thing is about hope. So how do you find the opportunity in the obstacle? Let me share a story with you. There's a shoe company in England who sent a couple of sales reps to Africa. They're thinking about expanding their market there. And they sent a couple of experts or salespeople to Africa to see what the market was like. The first rep comes back and they say, well, what do you think? And he's like, it's a terrible market. Nobody there wears shoes. Second rep comes back and they go, well, what do you think? It's like, it's a great market. Nobody there wears shoes. So how can two people have the same experience and view it completely differently, right? It's about perspective. It's about how we view things. And yes, there are obstacles in everybody's life, whether you have a mental illness or not. Life is tough, and that's okay. But it's how you respond to it. It's how you find those opportunities to get better, to be better, that are really, really important. One of the ways that we do that, these are actually going to be, we've got 6 of them in total. These are part of a series called Faces of Hope. They're 24 by 36 posters that we have. They're going to be in our Mindology office. And these are real folks from our community who each has their own particular issue listed. And again, you do the QR code, it'll take you to their story. And you can see where they came from, what happened, and how far they've come since then. One of the folks up there, she saw her husband get run over by a taxi cab and killed on his birthday. Another one shot herself in the chest and lived. I mean, there's some pretty cool stories there that are just unreal. And when you see how these folks have built their lives and put it back together and grown, you got folks here who are business owners, managers, influencers. It's pretty inspiring. So we've got these folks as Faces of Hope, and I would encourage you to check them out on our website. There's more covering a variety of different topics as well. So the presentation was entitled Promise. And you may notice that it's not spelled right. It's got a little semicolon where the I is. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the mental health world, the semicolon is a tattoo you often get to signify that you are a suicide attempt survivor. And the reason why the semicolon is chosen is because a semicolon is used in a place where they could have put a period, but they chose not to end the sentence. And this word promise is what I have on my wrist. It's where I put the knife. And I put it there on purpose because it is a promise to always take my medication, to reach out for help when I need it, and that tomorrow's going to be a better day, right? Now, you might be wondering, that was a really cool story about the 4-year-old. What happened? Well, let me tell you what happened. I got to see her do dance. We did the father-daughter dance. I taught her to drive. That's her with her first paycheck. Her at graduation, high school. That's her graduating as an RN. She just finished working at the Mayo Clinic. She's now at Regions. She works in the operating room. And that's her and her fiance, Andrew. They're getting married in 2 months. And not only do I get to walk her down the aisle, I get to officiate. And if you would have asked me 20 years ago, sitting in the cab of my truck on a night a lot like this, if I ever would have thought that would be possible, I would have told you no way. And I'm glad every day for that split-second decision I made. And so that, my friends, is the almost end of the story, but I couldn't be where I'm at without my family. So my oldest is 24 now. She's Madeline. Cooper's 13, almost 14, and my wife is 29, and I'm sticking to that story. But I wouldn't be able to be who I am without them. My wife is my anchor. People ask me, like, how do you manage your mental health? And I say, look, you got to find yourself an anchor. You know, it's got to be somebody in your life. It could be a parent, a friend, a spouse, whatever. But it's got to be somebody who knows you so well, they know when you're off just a little and has the permission to call you on it without you being defensive. It's so, so important. And to also understand and recognize what your triggers are, what gets your mental health motor running, where you get off kilter, and to help you avoid those and manage them whenever possible. So that's my family, and that's my presentation. So I'm happy to answer any questions y'all may have. I have no idea how long I talked for there, so we could be way short or way long. Yes. The question was, when's the clinic opening and where we're going to be at? In May sometime. It depends on when everything happens. We get possession on May 1. We got to do a few things to the building and space. So sometime in May. And it's at Midtown Square. If you know, if you park on the west side of the building, there's a big parking lot there. You go in like you're going to Stay Fit. Stay Fit is on your left. We're literally across the hall from Stay Fit. We have 5,000 square feet and 18 offices there that we'll be utilizing.
No, I'll just close this out. I mean, so if anybody else has questions, I would just encourage them to come to you after we're done here. And, you know, if you can stick around just for a couple minutes, that'd be great. Thank you for being here again today. Can we give them one more round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap up and close us out then. So again, thank you, everybody. All of our parents, confirmation students who are able to make these different ones, members of just the larger community outside of confirmation, because this is something that we felt really important that we would do during Lent. So thank you for, again, your participation, and we will continue to move forward as we seek hope in our life. So have a good evening, everybody, and we will see you not next week on Wednesday, but on Thursday for our Monday Thursday service. So have a good night.